In our work to this point, we've been assuming that markets are perfectly competitive. This is a reasonable approximation for real-world markets with lots of firms producing very similar products, like fast food. But it doesn't make sense for markets with very few firms, or even just one firm, or in markets where the products produced by different firms are very differentiated in the minds of consumers. For example, the operating systems Windows and Mac OS perform more or less the same basic tasks. But consumers with a Mac computer are going to use Mac OS, and Apple is the only firm that sells Mac OS. This is a case of monopoly, a market with only one firm. Monopolies and perfectly competitive markets are two extremes on the market structure spectrum. Unlike in perfectly competitive markets, where firms are price takers, in monopolies, firms are price makers. A monopoly firm is the only one in the market, so it gets to choose the price for the goods without having to worry about other firms' prices. There are no other firms. This changes the dynamics of the firm's decision quite radically, and that's what we're going to look at in this lecture. We'll start with the simplest example of a monopoly, a firm that's the only one in the market and sets the price for its good. Once the price is set, all consumers buy at that price. This is like in a perfectly competitive market in that all consumers buy at the same price. The difference now is that the monopoly firm sets the price, not the market. We start with a rule from the competitive market that carries over in this context. To maximize profit, firms set marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. That is, a firm climbs the profit hill we saw before, reaching the peak when the return to selling one more unit equals the cost of producing that unit. If the firm stops short of that, it is missing an opportunity for more profit. If the firm goes beyond that, it's losing money on the next unit. For a firm in a competitive market, marginal revenue was the easy part. It was simply the price. Remember that a single firm in a perfectly competitive market faces a horizontal demand curve like the one shown here. Demand for that firm's good is perfectly elastic. If a firm sells 100 units at a price of $3 per unit, the revenue is 100 times 3 or $300, which is this area here. And if the firm sells one more unit at that same price, the revenue is 101 times 3 or 303, which is this area here. The extra revenue brought in by that additional unit, or the marginal revenue, is the area of this region here, or $3. Marginal revenue for this additional unit is just the price. Now let's look at the monopoly firm, which gets to set the price for all consumers. The key difference is that this monopoly firm faces a downward sloping demand curve. There aren't any good substitutes for that firm's good. It's the only firm making this good. So firm demand is the same as market demand. If this firm sells 100 units at a price of $3 per unit, the revenue is $300, which is this area here. If this firm sells one more unit, the price drops. The new revenue is this area here. The firm lost the revenue represented by this rectangle here. This is due to the price falling as a result of the next unit being sold. But the firm gained the revenue represented by this rectangle here. This is due to the quantity sold increasing by 1 unit. The marginal revenue is the difference between what was gained and what was lost by selling this extra unit. The key is that by selling another unit, the monopoly firm feels two effects. It gets the extra money from selling that unit, but it also lowers the price on all other units. The more units the firm tries to sell, the lower down the demand curve it goes, and the lower the consumer's willingness to pay. Since the firm has to set the same price for all consumers, and it can't charge more to people who want the good more, it has to lower the price for everyone. So to sell an additional unit, it has to lower its price on all units. The firm gets the additional sale, but it gets lower revenue from all previous sales. Think of this as a poisoning effect. The additional sale poisons all the firm's previous sales by lowering the revenue it can get from them. The competitive firm never had to worry about this. For a competitive firm, selling more units had no effect on the price. Since that firm faced a constant price no matter how many units it sells, there was no such poisoning effect in that case. The bottom line is that for a monopoly firm, the marginal revenue is not simply equal to the price, as it was for a competitive firm. For the monopoly firm, the marginal revenue is equal to the price minus the poisoning effect, so marginal revenue will be lower than the price. The monopoly firm follows the same rule to maximize profit as a competitive firm. It sets marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. But now the marginal revenue is less than it was in the perfectly competitive case. It's less than the price of the good.